Hello. Today we're going to talk about the 8 pieces of information that we need in order to get an estimate for a simple roof truss package. My name's Chad Johnson. I'm with Truss Components of Washington, and I've been in the industry for about 35 years. Let's go ahead and get started. The information that we need in order to get you an accurate quote is pretty straightforward and available in most cases without too much trouble. It starts out with the most basic. We need to know the client name. Who are we quoting it for? If it is for you, then your name is all that we need. If you are doing the work for a client, then we'll want to have your information as well as your client's information. That helps us keep projects sorted out well in our system and easy to reference when you call back to make the order. In addition to the name of the client that we're working with, we'll also need some information about how to contact you. A phone number is fantastic. We communicate with a lot of people through phone calls and text, but we also like to have an email address. That's the best way for us to send documents and information back and forth and make sure that it is received and good for communication. The second of the 8 items that we need is a delivery address, and this serves a couple of purposes for us. One is we can pull up the delivery site on software like Google Maps and get an idea of if there will be power lines or trees or other obstacles to getting our truck into the job site and unloading the trusses. Also, it helps us to verify the snow loading that you've provided for us so that we can make sure that the trusses that we build are going to be the correct strength for the job site that they're going to. Okay, number 3, truss span and truss length. Now, typically truss span and length are going to be the same thing, but just for a little description, the truss span, like we talked about before, is how far is it from the outside of one wall to the outside of the other wall that these trusses are spanning across. That's our span. Now, if we have a cantilevered bottom cord to make the overhang, then the truss length is going to be different than the span. It would be the span plus the overhang on each side. So we'll need to know the truss span, and if it's different than the truss length, we'll need to know the truss length also. In addition to the truss span and length, number 4 that we need is the building length, or we also refer to that as the truss run. So span and length is along the truss. Building run or building length helps us to determine, along with number 5, the truss spacing, how many trusses will we need. So for instance, if we're doing a 24-foot truss span and the truss length happens to be 24 feet as well with a standard overhang on it, and our building is 36 feet long, well, the number of trusses that we're going to need is going to change dependent on the truss spacing. So if we have a 24-inch truss spacing, 24 inches on center, we take that 36 divided by 2 plus 1. And the reason that we add 1 is because we start with the truss at 0. So if we're 2 foot on center, we're going to end up with a total of 19 trusses. But if this was a pole building, for instance, and the trusses were 12 feet on center, then we're going to end up with a pair at 12 feet, a pair at 24 feet, 1 at the front and 1 at the back, and so we're only going to need 6 trusses. So we need the building length, number 4, and number 5, the truss spacing, and that'll help us make sure that we get the right number of trusses and that each truss is designed to carry the proper amount of roof space. We'll go ahead and stick with this drawing here for a couple minutes, and let's talk about number 7. We need to know, what is the roof pitch? And the pitch is typically described as something in 12, like a 4 in 12, a 5 in 12, and that indicates the number of inches that the truss will rise in a 12-inch length. So for instance, a 412 pitch truss will go up 4 inches for every 12 inches that it goes in. And so we need to know that roof pitch in order to make sure that the roof is the proper steepness or slope that you're looking for. The seventh thing that we'll need to know is what is your roofing material? And the reason we need to know that is to determine what weight the structure will be carrying. Composition roofing weighs more than metal roofing. Metal roofing and composition weigh less than tile roofing. And metal roofing over plywood or OSB weighs more than metal roofing does by itself. So we want to make sure that we are designing your trusses to be able to carry the load that's going to be put on them. And so you'll need to let us know what is the roofing material that you're going to use. Typically, if it is a 2-foot on center structure, we're going to assume that there's going to be a ceiling installed, and so we will load the trusses for that ceiling. If it's a pole barn or post frame structure though, we're not going to assume that there's going to be a ceiling on it, because so often those are built with only a roof and they're open below. And so if you do intend to put a ceiling on your post frame or pole barn structure, please let us know that. We need to compensate for that extra weight when we do our truss design. Lastly, number 8, we need to know what is the building going to be used for. Different types of buildings get different design considerations based on what we call an importance factor. So a fire station is going to be built to a higher standard than a backyard shed or a pole structure that will be housing animals. And so we need to know what is the purpose of the building, and that way we can design it to meet the specific codes that it is going to be subject to. Well, we talked about the 8 minimum requirements in order to get a truss estimate that's going to be accurate for a simple building. If you are doing anything more complicated than a garage or a rectangle pole barn or a house that just happens to have all the same truss span on it, then we're going to need a bit more information. Typically, a set of blueprints will be what is required in order for us to get the shape of the building, the profiles of the trusses, find all the bearing points. So if your building is more complicated than just a rectangle or a square, we'd love to see those blueprints. We just want to make sure that we get you an accurate estimate. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this video and you've gotten some good information out of it. If you'd like to learn more about trusses, here's a video on precision measuring in order to match up to an existing truss package or an existing building. It also talks a bit more about some of those technical terms that we discussed. And down here, we have a video on how to place a truss order and have the delivery go well. So we'll see you in those videos.